Welcome, my friends, to the Bob and Brad podcast, produced by Bob and Brad, the two most famous physical therapists on the internet. I am Bob, and I'm exactly one half of the Bob and Brad team. My guest today is going to be Dr. Terry Wahls, and this is a fascinating story. If you have MS, an autoimmune disease, or even a neurodegenerative disease, if I can say that right, you're going to want to listen, because what she has done with diet and a few things in addition to diet has been absolutely amazing. She went from, I don't want to give away too much, but she went from being in a wheelchair to walking. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Wahls. Dr. Terry Wahls, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I mention your book again, the Wahls Protocol, and the way I understood it, hope this is right, but you're talking about diet, sleep, stress reduction, exercise, muscle stimulation. I put those together, and then reducing toxic exposure. If you were to rank those, I don't know if you can, but
so it will always depend a bit on the person, Bob.
Sure.
And the way I'm going to have people think about this is we have genes. There are about 230 different genes that increase the risk for any given autoimmunity diagnosis, whether it's MS, inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis. That's a different set of genes for each autoimmune problem. The vast majority of folks with that gene won't get that autoimmune diagnosis. And there was a new paper out in Science that said everyone, 800 out of 801 new cases of MS had antibodies to Epstein-Barr. So they said Epstein-Barr is probably a very key trigger for developing MS.
Sure.
But then they made another really important observation. There's other stuff that has to happen because the vast majority, 99.992% who get Epstein-Barr don't get MS. So there's more steps. And those other steps are Epstein-Barr is
with
mono.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those other steps are smoking, air pollution, what you've been eating, your microbiome, your toxins, your social network, your self-talk, your psychological stress, your physical stress.
Wow.
The random events of your life. Well, so I talk to people, you can't fix the stuff that's in your past. All you can do is the stuff starting now.
Moving forward.
And in the VI, if you want to come be part of the group classes that I ran, I would ask people to commit to the diet principles 100% for 100 days.
Gotcha.
If that was too hard, then I would say, if you want to just work on your physical activity, we'll send you to physical therapy. If you want to just work on a stress reducing program, we'll send you to our health behavior person. Gotcha. If you want to work on improving your diet gradually, as opposed to being all in, we'll send you to the dietitian. Or if you know that this is not the right time in your life because you're in the midst of a health crisis with one of your children or your spouse, or a financial crisis, you're changing jobs, you're moving, whatever your life circumstances are, that's not the right time, then ask for a referral back when it is the right time. So it's not my job to convince you to do the work. My job is to tell you, here are the options.
Sure.
You can be all in and would love to help you, or you could pick that you want to work on it gradually and I'll send you to the right person.
Gotcha.
The biggest impact, if you're ready, is food. But if you're not ready and you can't do it, then we have to pick an intervention that you could actually do.
If they go on the diet 100%, average person, when might they see some improvement?
Yeah.
Might.
So I'll I'll put this in the context of what we saw in my clinics at the VA.
Gotcha.
So these are people often on disability due to their complicated chronic health problems.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have a wide variety of diseases that brought them to my clinic. Autoimmune, they would probably have comorbid anxiety, depression, some sort of mood problem, probably have comorbid high blood pressure, weight issues. So they're sick people.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety, so mood would be brain fog, fatigue, and pain were the three most common symptoms that people had with all of these diagnoses. We would have an intake, help them understand that their factors contributing to their illness, prioritize their interventions, and get them to begin their dietary efforts. Then we'd see them every month. On the first month, people would often come back and say, you know, I'm hopeful. It's not quite as bad. The pain is not quite as bad.
Oh, good.
The low mood is not quite as low. The energy is maybe a little bit better.
That's very rapid.
So that's maybe a little glimmer of
Right,
hope.
right.
So we're emphasizing little here. But by 3 months, the vast majority are saying energy's better, mood is better, pain is less. Now that continues to improve over the next 3 months. And then because we had so much demand, I would move people out. So I'd only do follow-up for 6 months. In my clinical trials where I follow people for years, the longer you do all of this, you know, you continue to see gains.
Sure.
The velocity of improvement is the greatest at the first 3 months.
Sure.
The velocity of improvement slows down, but it does continue.
Gotcha. And hence the 100 days.
So that's why, so 100%, 100 days.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that we've learned that we have to remind people is your self-care routine, your diet and lifestyle is now your disease modifying treatment for whatever that condition it is that you have. And after you've been doing it for a couple of years, you feel so good. You sort of forget the time before.
Sure.
And then you're at your niece or nephew's wedding.
Right.
And the food that's there isn't really quite Wahls compliant.
Right.
But you don't want to offend your extended family, so you eat it, and you experience a flare of your underlying health problems.
Ah.
And you go see your specialist who says, see, I told you that Wahl stuff was a bunch of hooey, and you know, you should have stayed on your drugs and blah, blah, blah. And so now we're much more explicit with folks that if you get a good response, this is your disease modifying treatment. And if you stop it, because you quit following the diet, you quit meditating, you stop exercising, expect a flare of disease activity.
So
just as if you abruptly stopped your disease modifying drug treatment, you would expect a flare of disease activity.
So let's say you go out to eat, and I know you don't want dairy. Let's say they put some butter on your broccoli or something like that. I mean, are you going to notice that? Do you think?
Well, so this will depend on the individual, of course.
Sure.
I can speak from my own personal experience.
Yeah.
That I have tried general neuralgia. So intense electrical pains that will start here at my temple, come down across my jaw, sometimes down to my neck, occasionally on the left side of my face, but more often on the right.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have gluten, dairy, or eggs, in 6 to 24 hours, those electrical pains will start.
Wow. Even, I mean, a small amount.
So I do not intentionally have those foods.
Right, right.
Do I accidentally get exposed to those foods? Yes. And so eating, so I'm careful if I'm eating out to order things that are just going to be naturally gluten and dairy free. I don't
Sure.
get sauces or dressings.
Understood.
And the other thing that I'd like to do is travel, and it's become so much easier to go to the local organic grocer or have foods delivered,
Sure.
so that I'm comfortable with what I'm going to be eating.
Sure.
Before the pandemic, I would fly with a head of cabbage.
Yeah, I read that.
So I would be eating cabbage as I'm going through. It supports my detox. In that way, I can get enough vegetables, because I really want to have a lot of vegetables while I am.
I'm gluten free since June. I had really a sensitivity to it, and now since reading your book, I've gone dairy free, which I'm finding harder. It just,
and the gluten and dairy stimulate opioid receptors in our brain.
Yeah, I read that.
So they give us lots of pleasure.
Yes.
It stimulates dopamine centers, so lots of pleasure, which means if we stop them, we may experience withdrawal.
Sure.
So irritability, craving, it is very uncomfortable. Now, not everyone who has gluten sensitivity will have cross-reactivity to dairy.
Sure.
There are some other reasons to avoid dairy, in that some epidemiologic studies, higher intake of dairy is associated with higher rates of schizophrenia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS. There are other studies showing that higher rates of full fat dairy are associated with lower rates of MS. So, and cross-sectional studies raise interesting hypotheses that we have to test with interventional studies. When I first started doing my clinical trials, the IRB, required me to investigate what I did and what I ate. And so that's where I have my pilot data. So most of my dietary intervention studies have at least one arm that uses the diet that was in my original diet.
I see. Is it casein in milk, or is it?
So casein is the protein in dairy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Is that the problem, or is it?
It's the protein. It's the casein. Lactose, which is the sugar,
right?
Some people can't digest. That doesn't cause the immune response. It may cause bloating and diarrhea, but it's not going to cause the immune response.
I see.
And I'll tell you, the clarified butter, which has most of the casein removed, although not all, but most, I can tolerate pretty well.
Oh, interesting.
So I'll have a little bit of casein, a little clarified butter. That's fine. I like to cook in animal fats if I'm going to fry something. Otherwise, I prefer to bake, broil, roast, and then mix olive oil and herbs to make a sauce that I pour cold over my vegetables and meat.
Sure.
A variety of pestos, whether it's a basil pesto or a chimichurri with more oregano and parsley.
And again, you have a book, a diet book also. I mean,
a cookbook?
Yeah, a cookbook.
Yeah. I'll flash it for your audience.
Yeah, flash it.
There we go.
Very good.
And what I really like about this book is that I wrote it for people living in rural Iowa who have to shop in the rural grocery stores.
Sure. Yep.
So, and I wrote for people who are fatigued. So these are not complicated recipes that will take you all day to make.
Sure.
These are things you can make with ingredients that are widely available. I have some more exotic recipes in there as well, but and also presume you don't know how to cook.
Right. That'd be me. So, I mean, I want to make sure we get to this.
Don't know how to cook.
I want to make sure we get to this. You have different levels or diets. The Wahls diet. Am I stating that right?
Correct. So the way to think about my approach is I want to meet people where they're at.
Sure.
So start with what you can do.
Sure.
And I have a simple level 1, which you can do as a meat eater or as a vegetarian. And at a really high level, it's more vegetables, greens, cabbage, onion, mushroom family, deeply colored vegetables, gluten-free, dairy-free, and egg-free. And that I recommend everyone take gluten, dairy, and eggs out for at least 3 months. And you can try putting eggs back in, and you might be able to tolerate eggs. Eggs are a really marvelous nutrition if you do tolerate them.
Well,
I do not, which
yeah.
is sad, but that's life.
Is there any way to know beforehand, like let's say your symptoms?
Well, there are some ways to investigate beforehand in terms of doing some lab testing. In my clinical practice at the VA, I could not do any of that kind of investigation. Sure. So in my clinical practice, we did this entirely through diet and reintroduction. And that's what I teach people to do in the book. Because, you know, the additional investigation is more expensive. It's not sure. As reliable or as consistent. If you take it out and retest, that's in my mind much more reproducible.
So yeah, I eat eggs, Ed. I'm gonna monitor my symptoms to see how I do. But the Wahls Paleo, Wahls Paleo Plus, I mean, those are all stricter.
Correct. So we move further along. The Paleo talks about the benefits of fermentation, talks about the benefits of organ meats, about nuts and seeds, about why to consider soaking and sprouting nuts and seeds. The ketogenic version talks about why some people may benefit from a ketogenic diet and how to do a ketogenic diet. And we talk about whether you're going to do it with medium chain triglycerides or olive oil and the pros and cons of those two approaches. And then I talk about an elimination diet, which is more restrictive yet, to take out the most inflammatory foods and then reintroduce them to assess, do you have food sensitivities? And acknowledge that you can alternatively do a food sensitivity test to see is there a specific problem for you.
So that study you did originally with 20 people, right? 20 people.
Yeah.
What level were they at?
They were basically following level 2.
Okay. So Wahls Paleo.
Yeah.
So can you talk about the pulse test? I thought this was fascinating.
Yeah. So one way of assessing your response to things you're putting in your mouth or on your skin is to monitor your pulse for a full minute. Then expose yourself to this new compound because you eat it. Sure. Or put it on your skin. Wait a minute, and then follow your pulse again and see if there's a change. And if you are having an increase in your pulse, that would indicate that you're having a abnormal physiologic response, and that food's a problem for you.
Gotcha. So will that work with eggs? I got to ask, you keep coming back to the eggs.
I see you're having some pain here.
Yeah, I do. I mean,
So when you think about eggs, Bob, the yolks are where the fat soluble vitamins are, and where the omega-3 fats are,
yep.
And the B vitamins. So the yolks are the most nutritious part of the egg.
Right.
So you could try and the white, where the protein is what might be causing the abnormal immune response.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So you can try the pulse test. If you're going to try the pulse test, I would still take the eggs out for a week first.
Sure.
And then try the pulse test.
Sure. I'll do that. Thank
you. My medical students who would volunteer in our lab, I would encourage them to follow the study diet for 1 week or 2 weeks, just so they could get a sense of what we are asking our study participants to do. And so it'd be a tough week for the students because they're going through withdrawal and craving for all that stuff. And then at the end of the week, they're like, oh, thank God, goodness. They go out and have pizza and beer. And then several of the students felt really terrible. And they're like, oh my God.
Physically really terrible.
They felt really terrible. And what they discovered was, by implementing the concepts that they learned from the Wahls diet, we resolved their anxiety, their depression, their severe periods, their brain fog, improved their effectiveness at studying, their migraines. And so not all of our students stayed on the Wahls diet.
Sure.
But many discovered they actually felt a whole lot better. So they became believers.
Wow. Yeah, I actually, it greatly reduced my anxiety by getting off gluten. I mean, it's
huge.
Eliminated it. It did. So I want to be respectful of your time. We got 3 minutes left. I just want to ask you if you could tell us how you're currently doing.
Well, it is so exciting what I'm doing. We're working on a new grant. I'm very excited about that. Tonight, Jack and I are looking at going out to do a luminary walk in the local county park.
Wow.
That was supposed to happen last week with the full moon, so we'll probably need headlights. So I'm doing very well. My challenge is to remember when I get excited about a new project, to continue to maintain my self-care routine.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, you strike me as that kind of person that can get so focused on something, everything else gets put by the wayside.
Well, I get pretty excited. I've been very excited about this grant. And so I have not had I usually have 2.5 hours of self-care in the morning. And so the last couple of weeks, I have sort of encroached into that. Sure. And Jackie sitting me down last night saying, you're not doing your self-care.
That's right. That's right. You always need that person next to you, keeping in line. So, well, thank you so much for this. Again, we're going to mention everything again. The Wahls Protocol is the book, and you have the cookbook also, and terrywahls.com. You can find a lot of information there. I mean, really, there's so many people that should look into this. And this book, by the way, has so much more information than just the diet. I mean, you cover everything.
Much more than diet.
Yes, absolutely. So really, it's been my honor to have you on. I hope we can help a lot of people. I'm sure we can. So anytime you want to be on, the door is open.